Today on the show, I have someone super exciting, someone I was thrilled to sit down with, Fabrice Desmarescaux. Now, Fabrice looks after leadership development at McKinsey Co., which means he works with C-level executives to understand how they can broaden their business, how they can go harder, but how they can lead with purpose. And his book, The Art of Retreats, A Leader's Journey into Clarity, Balance and Purpose, is one that really touched my heart. I reckon it's a game changer that you should pick up. But first of all, listen to this conversation with Fabrice. He's going to tell you how to get those moments of solitude. How do you find balance in a world when you're hungry to do more, when everything is telling you to go, 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 and to be busier with all of the notifications, the artificial light, the 24/7 nature of the business world? This is a very special episode. What Fabrice is giving you here is a playbook. It's what he teaches executive leaders to become the next generation of leaders, to be able to tap in and get fulfillment, to understand the root cause of all of this, to drive forward with purpose, and to have that balance, that necessary balance, so that you can be more creative, that you can take time off the dance floor. I remember this in my MBA. We studied strategies for growth, and one of those strategies was to get onto the balcony and off the dance floor. We touched on that and more. This is the episode for you. If you feel like you're racing at 100 million miles per hour, like life is coming at you, yet you're striving to get up that mountain, to become the leader that you want to be, to lead your team onto more success, this is at the crux of it. So take a moment, take an hour and a half, go for a walk, put this into your headphones, and really listen to Fabrice's message. This conversation is so important. It's so important. So without further ado, take it away, Fabrice Desmarescaux. Well, Fabrice Desmarescaux, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. Happy to be here.
It's been something in the pipeline that I've been very much looking forward to, because your background's super interesting. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about who you are and what's brought you to this point in Singapore? I know you spent a long time here in the East, but I came across your work and it felt like a bit like I was guided into it. And so I reached out to you because I think you can help a lot of the listeners on this show manage something that's very profound. And this is going to be really something that I think people should listen to this conversation over and over again. But why don't you start by introducing yourself and a bit about your background?
Well, Tim, that's very kind. So I am a partner with McKinsey, and I look after our leadership development practice in the region. My background has been in leadership development for the last 20 years. And before that, I was a strategy consultant with McKinsey in the financial services practice. So if you try to draw a timeline, essentially the first half of my life is a very traditional French-educated engineer, mathematics, business school, consulting for 12 years, ending as a partner at McKinsey, leading the financial services practice. So a very classic business background. And I was very happy doing this until pretty much the last few years where I started questioning. And actually, I was always very happy at McKinsey. I left McKinsey in 2004, joined a financial institution, and believing that this was what would really constitute success for me. And externally, I had all the markers of success, the position, the responsibilities, a few thousand people under my care, and the driver, and all the stuff, all the stuff. And I realized that I was not very fulfilled, that there was really nothing wrong. I could do the job. I just was not enjoying myself. This was not a pleasant experience. And that triggered an existential reflection. What is it that I should be doing? If all my life I've prepared to be a banker and a bank CEO, and I feel this vacuum inside, and really a sense of wasting my time. And this is absolutely not a reflection of the company I was working with at the time. Really, it was me. And so that triggered a reflection and a complete career change when I was 42. And so
Okay.
I went from being a senior banker after having been a partner at McKinsey to starting completely afresh in a new career in executive search, searching and recruiting senior executives, initially in the financial services sector, because this is where I had all my networks, and for a very well-known global executive search firm. And I learned the ropes of identifying what makes a candidate great, what are the drivers of great careers, what separates the people who make it all the way to the top from those who fizzle away and fail and fall into oblivion, what occasionally makes people seem to be very fulfilled and what makes people run on empty. So that's a fascinating experience, particularly if you can imagine someone who's been massively left-brained,
Mm.
analytical, numbers-driven, KPIs, performance, etc., to fall into the world of what makes great careers, what makes executives fulfilled. And I loved it. And it was like an awakening for me to say, I have finally found something that gives a meaning to my life, helping clients recruit great executives, helping those executives in their careers and following them. And over the years, and so that's roughly 20 years ago, and my practice morphed from the transactional recruitment to working with individuals and coaching them and supporting their careers, their performance, their transitions. And we can talk more about that, but I'll keep the story short. At some point in time, I decided that the recruitment activity that I was still handling on behalf of my firm was more getting a distraction, was really getting in the way of my passion and what gives my life sense of meaning, really, which was working with senior executives, working with their teams, developing the next generation of leaders. And I decided to do that full time. Again, that was a bit of a jump into the unknown because the executive search and recruitment practice had been very good to me, and it almost defined my identity. And so going back to my clients, and many of these clients had been with me for 15 years, and telling them, please, let's continue working together on developing your leaders. But if you need to recruit a CFO, a CEO for one of your businesses, etc., go somewhere else because I'm giving up this practice. So that was another jump into the unknown, but I think it was for a good cause, which was really to fulfill my passion of working with leaders and developing them and supporting them. So I'm now doing this full time. I'm very grateful that my alma mater, McKinsey, at one point said, hey, would you like to come back and do this at the firm instead of doing it at your own place? And I thought that was a great way to close the loop. I've been back at McKinsey now for almost 2.5 years. And I work very closely with the partners who drive strategy and transformation, and I bring the leadership development components to our clients. So that's in a few minutes, a summary of my professional career. I think what I have not mentioned is that being born in the West, I was raised in Paris. And so I have a very Western engineering mindset in a way, but I've been immersed in the East for a very long time now. I moved to Singapore when I was a lot younger than today. And so I've immersed myself in the Asian thinking and particularly Eastern spiritual traditions. And that's a dimension that I've also explored extensively and that I bring to my clients whenever they're open to it. So I'm not doing any proselytism. I'm myself very, very open-minded, but I've studied in various traditions. So I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a meditation teacher, and I bring a spiritual dimension to the art of leadership.
Right.
I think leadership for seen as we're here to deliver numbers, we're here to produce performance, revenue, profits, and shareholder value is an extremely dangerous view that has brought the world in a very dark place.
Mhm.
And it's only by bringing a dimension of how do we enable organizations to flourish? How do we enable human beings to flourish while respecting our communities, our environments, our future generations? And therefore, we cannot pursue profit for profit's sake, because that leads us to making all sorts of short-term decisions that essentially destroy our societies and destroy our world. So we need to bring something new to the art of leadership. I'm not the only one saying that, and there's many
Right.
leaders who are also aware of this. Unfortunately, when you're the CEO of a publicly listed company, you have quarterly earnings to report, and the world of investors will not cut you any slack. So that's it's going to be a long journey, but one that I'm deeply committed to. So I'll summarize who I am on the personal front. I'm married, and we have a 25-year-old daughter, and I'm lucky that she's still living with us and studying psychology in Singapore.
He's following your footsteps then. I did psychology as well. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your story. And I think the parts, it's just nice to have you lay out the pieces of your story and how it all came together. And it's beautiful how it ended up full circle. And I think that's people can get a lot from that, because that must have been quite scary to give up what you thought was, the status, the power. You're leading thousands of people. You've been in the banking world, the finance industry, working for a very high profile consultancy. And you, as you said, you built your career and your mindset logically to go after that. So everything you'd been doing was aimed at that target. And then to have the existential crisis at 42, at what point, and this is probably a nice segue into the art of retreats, at what point did you think about the book? And you have this fantastic book that I've been drawn to. I've read it. I came in to this experience myself because of experiencing what I would call a bit of an existential crisis, thinking about what am I doing, and it was a shock, because there's certain accolades and things that I've achieved that I'm very proud of, yet you realize that the fulfillment comes from a different part of you, and you need to go inward. And I think that's what led me, and your book popped out. It came into my view, and then I was like, I've got to have a conversation with this guy. I've got to have Fabrice on the show, because there's tons of people that will be sitting listening to this going, I resonate with what you're saying, Fabrice. I get it. But that worked for you, but it might not work for me. And I get what you're saying about the competitive nature. But if I give up my thing because of sustainability and the environment, and I don't hit my nut, and I be the good person, the competitors are going to win. So there's all of these different mindsets. And what that I think leads to is people continuing to just do the same old because they can't get out of that rut. Does it take a crisis to get us out of that? And what would your perspective be on that? Like, at what point did you go, that's 42, that's done, gonna go into the unknown? Like, how did you deal with all of that? And like, what would you say to people if that does resonate and they're like, there's a spark of an idea?
Yeah, well, every journey is unique, and my journey is never going to be somebody else's journey. What
Mm.
I recognize, though, is there's certain patterns that we see, and for people who are driven and smart and conscientious and hungry, it's in a way fantastic, because they usually do very well.
Mm.
There's a doom to being smart and driven and conscientious and hungry, because you sometimes push and continue pushing, and you cut yourself absolutely no slack because you don't want to slow down. And you say, look, even if you start feeling the discomfort, as I was feeling the discomfort in my late 30s and early 40s, you say to yourself, but what's wrong with me? And you question yourself, and you don't listen to the inner voice, because you're telling yourself, what's wrong with me? I'm doing well professionally. I keep getting promoted. I'm making good money. Who am I to be unhappy about that? And there's no one to talk to. Because if you talk to your friends, they say, dude or girl, what's wrong with you? I mean, you have everything in life. So what's wrong with you?
Mm.
And that's a pattern that I recognize in a lot of the executives I've met. It's like, what's wrong with me? I'm successful. I've made it. I've reached levels that I never thought I would be able to reach. Very often, some of the most driven individuals I've worked with come from fairly humble backgrounds, like me. And so we're like, looking back and say, look, in my wildest dream, I would never thought I would be able to get to the point where, my parents are proud of me. If I tell my parents, I'm thinking of taking a break to find the meaning of life, they're not going to understand.
Mm.
And if you speak to your spouse, they'll say, well, maybe, what's wrong? And so there's a loneliness that starts forming around you when you have these doubts. And that's a very common pattern.
That's
What
really
happens
scary.
is that
Hard.
sense of discomfort will not go away, right? The monster under the bed is not going to disappear. It's not, you can close your eyes and hope it's getting smaller and smaller, but it's getting bigger and bigger, and it's not going away. That is for sure. Now, sometimes the discomfort, we have to be careful not to confuse discomfort because I am in a bad environment. So my boss is a jerk. The company's culture is toxic. I'm stuck, and there's someone else who has the job I want, and this someone else is not going away. So very specific context dependent discomfort, which simply tells me, well, maybe you should move to another company. And you have to not be confused that there's also the discomfort of, I truly find no sense, no fulfillment, no meaning in what I'm doing. And I see a lot of people are confused between these two. So in the first case, you're just in a bad environment.
Mm.
But they start questioning their careers, and they throw the baby with the bathwater. And the others, sometimes they just, who find no fulfillment and no meaning in what they're doing, they just move to another company to do the same because they think it's the company that is making them miserable when it's actually their career. And so both are confused, but for the wrong reasons. And so when I work with executives and they're starting to voice that discomfort, I always try to distinguish, is this context specific? Are you just in a bad place but doing something you love? Or are you potentially in a good firm but doing something that is not fulfilling you?
Wow, that's a really great starting point. That's where you would start to cut the. Someone comes to
Yeah,
you, CEO and executive, and that's the starting point to kind of diagnose.
correct. Because the first one is purely circumstantial, and you should just make a move to another firm that will give you a better environment. And that's what executive search firms are for, headhunters, etc. They will help you make that move, and you tap into your networks, right? So if you're a banker, you go to another bank. If you're a consultant, you go to another consulting firm. If you're in FMCG, you go to another FMCG. You make a lateral move to take with you the experience, the networks, the skills that you have, and you bring your value to another company, a competitor of your first place, right? And that's 90% of the executive moves that we see around, right? If it's the second one, that's an existential question.
Mm.
Oh, changing companies, oh, I'm not happy with Procter and Gamble, I'm moving to Unilever, I'm not happy with HSBC, I'm moving to Citibank. That is not going to cut it. You're going to be equally miserable. And so you're going to probably fail because you're going to be, it's hard to move to a new company. You need to form new networks to prove yourself, etc. And so, if you don't have the fire in the belly and the passion and the fulfillment, it's very hard. And so I see these people who misdiagnose their existential crisis really having careers that go down very quickly, and it's not pleasant to watch. So that's why I always make that distinction, and I try to help people know which is which. Don't throw the baby with the bathwater. Don't jeopardize your career simply because you're stuck in a bad place. Just move to another company, but don't mistake an existential crisis for the symptoms of being at a bad company.
Wow. That's really, really powerful, because that's almost like a relationship, not giving up on a relationship just because times are hard, or versus, no, this is the relationship itself, and I don't want to be a part of this relationship. And
I love the analogy you're making, Tim. It's like exactly that. This person that I'm with is, we're facing a tough time together. Yeah, the birth of a child, it totally changes the dynamics, right? So we're going to weather the storm, or one of us has lost his job or her job. We're going to weather the storm. But yeah, there could be tensions in the relationship, but there's nothing wrong, right?
Mm.
And the other example is, this is really not the right person for me. Our values are totally misaligned. We don't want the same things. We don't want to live in the same city. Whatever you want, right? She wants kids and I don't, and whatever. It doesn't matter. So your analogy is very good.
And I love the subtitle of your book, A Leader's Journey Towards Clarity, Balance, and Purpose, and they seem like pillars to me, because the question then I have is, in all of that, we're busy. Like, what is the cost of busyness? And you mentioned loneliness, which is really an important topic right now as well, because I think there's a lot of people realizing how detrimental loneliness is. But there's parts of loneliness, the fix to loneliness. I know you can tell us about that, but what's the cost of business? Because I can imagine someone's very busy on top of this question that you're throwing out, saying, is it the job that you're in and the industry, or is it actually? Because what happened to me was I was broken. I was exhausted. I was broken. My body stopped to the point that I had to stop, and I was always go, 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 go. And it wasn't until I had to literally, I was in bed for like 6 days, just I could not move. I had nothing left until I could, and then I had a retreat of such, because I was forced to, and my mind could kind of work through things because I had to let go. And so, yeah, but the busyness had to stop. It forced the busyness to stop. But what if someone's super busy? What's the cost of that? And then they've got these feelings of loneliness. It is lonely at the top. They haven't got that circle around them, their peers, that they can actually throw ideas off. Like, how do you unpack that to get to where we need to go, which is the clarity, the balance, and the purpose?
Yeah. Well, I think we need to go to the root cause of busyness, because busyness can take many forms and can have many um, original causes. So let me give you a few examples, right? There's the busyness that comes from suddenly having a lot of work. So a new project starts. You're kicking off a new project. You've been given a new responsibility, and you need to figure out the lay of the land, and you're not fully proficient yet in what the job requires, so you need to put extra hours. There's many cases, at the beginning of the COVID crisis, for example, a lot of people had to work extra hours because they had to figure out, in a world that was mostly working in person in the office, how do we continue operating a business when we cannot go to the office? So that generates additional hours where everybody needs to work harder. And so I call that, the circumstantial busyness. And that is fine. There's always times, if you work in M&A, there will be times when you have to put the all-nighter. That comes with the job, but then there will be recovery parts, right? So that's one form of busyness. And I think anyone who gets to a certain level of seniority in their careers, anyone who's not on a 9 to 5 kind of, forget it's 5 p.m., shut off your computer, walk home and forget about everything. But that's not typical of senior executives.
Right.
So anyone who's senior enough will have gone through the peaks of busyness. And I think that's fine. There's no avoiding it. What's important is what are the mechanisms that we have for recovery when busyness stops. Mm-hmm. So that is what I would call acute busyness, to be distinguished from chronic busyness. Chronic busyness is being always busy. Now, being always busy comes from a number of reasons. Number one, it's a status symbol. So, how are you, Tim? Oh, I'm so busy. Okay, you've established that you're an important guy, that the company cannot do without you, your plate is full, and that's a code, right? We greet each other with, I'm so busy these days, right? It means absolutely nothing, but that's a projection of status. Right. So we entertain busyness. In some societies, by the way, in some cultures, when you're busy, it's because you're not important. The really important people actually are not that busy.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
And do you think though as well that on that point quickly then, if someone was in a feeling of they're in the wrong job, or they're in an environment where they're worried that they, like right now, there's a lot of redundancy going on, they create busyness just to feel like that, to show that they're doing something, yet that's actually causing more distress and demise because it's got no purpose to it. It's got nothing, there's no reason for the busyness. You're just doing it because you're in survival mode, because you want to look busy, but like you said, the power symbol, but it's not actually contributing. There's no purpose and aliveness behind
100%.
it.
100%. And I'll give credit to Cal Newport, who he calls that productivity signaling.
Right.
And that's become pandemic since we work from home. Because, when you're in the office, if you remember in the old days, you would signal that you're in the office. You would come early, put your jacket on the chair, turn on your computer to signal that you're in the office. Then you can go and spend an hour having coffee with your buddies. It doesn't matter, right? But you're signaling. And then you leave the office only after the boss has left. So that's productivity. It's bullshit productivity, but it's productivity signaling.
Yeah.
Now we don't do that anymore because we work from home. And so how do we signal productivity? We respond to messages like that. 5 seconds. Oh, you send me an email, I'm always online. Always on, responding to email, responding to WhatsApp, responding to Slack, whatever. Yeah, that's the way you signal that you're productive. Not by doing actual work, because actually signaling productivity, responding to email, is a colossal waste of time. Colossal waste of time. The way you're productive is by particularly, I'm talking about knowledge workers, people who use their brains to work and not their hands. You are productive when you focus on a problem and you do problem solving, you prepare arguments, you do your analysis. If you're a financial modeler, you run very complex Excel spreadsheets. If you're a lawyer, you write arguments. If you're in marketing, you check presentations and videos and advertising, and you select the best platform, etc. This is work that you need to do. This is what I call deep work. You need to do it in a quiet environment for an uninterrupted number of hours, so that you can produce your best outcome. If you're constantly ping-ponging emails and responding to, and essentially pushing paper and stuff like that, you're not a productive guy. You're just a completely scattered, fragmented person. So productivity signaling and busyness actually is being unproductive.
It can
And
feel
it's extremely
scary.
tiring. It generates stress because you feel like you're constantly on. But if you think of it, you could potentially do your best work by not responding to email for hours or days. And I'll confess, I do that sometimes. I shouldn't say that too loud. But I don't have to check emails every day.
Right.
Because it's a colossal waste of time. My work entails being in the presence of clients. And when I do retreats with groups of senior executives, typically a CEO and the executive suite, I will immerse myself. I will arrive in the room 1 hour before or 2 hours before. I will prepare the room. I will be with them completely present. I may even not eat because I don't feel hungry when I'm facilitating these retreats. And I will not respond to a single message during the whole day because I'm doing what is for me productive work. And everyone has their version of what is productive work, whether it's designing, coding, analyzing, writing, etc. So busyness comes in the way, and particularly signaling busyness and signaling productivity comes in the way of us doing real work. And it's actually extremely stressful, right? So when you talk about this busyness that led you to a burnout, yes, absolutely. A lot of people are facing this because they feel pressured to demonstrate that they're busy, responding to emails, messages, etc., attending meetings that, back-to-back Zoom meetings just to show our face, etc., instead of doing what is really the meaningful work.
And we have all this technology to record what we're doing. We have all this tracking technology. It's all the system feels like it's sometimes to force you into that. Yet you don't feel like you had a productive day because you literally just did a to-do list, and that to-do list didn't even have prioritization, and you didn't block out your time. Like it really did feel like you're in survival mode rather than productive mode.
Yes, absolutely.
So
And there's another reason for the busyness that we observe among senior executives, and this one is much deeper and much more worrying to me, is that in the last 20, 25 years, the world has become more complex. And by that, I mean that we have less and less understanding of the relationship between causes and effects. So markets are changing, the conditions are changing, the geopolitics are changing, and we don't understand what are the drivers of those. So we've migrated from engineering problems, technical problems, where we understood very well the relationships between causes and effects. We knew how many workers we had to put in a mine to extract so many tons of coal every day. And some of these engineering problems were not simple at all. They required a lot of science and experience, but they were engineering problems. And the whole world has been built on engineering problems, supply chains, all of the accounting methods that we have. It's all based on wanting to get predictability, certainty, replicability. Just a budget is simply the reflection that you know the future.
for sure.
When we do a budget, we say, well, revenue is going to be so much, so I'm going to set the target of my salespeople to so much, and then our costs are going to be that, and so I'm going to set the targets for my manufacturing guys and supply chain guy to do this, right? And then my general and admin expenses are going to be that, and therefore, ta-da! Here's my budget 2025. It's nothing else than the prediction of the future, which in today's environment is mostly BS.
That's crazy. Right. So we're
Right?
chasing.
So we use this old engineering mindset that has been propagated by consulting firms, business schools, accounting firms, you name it, right? We live in this world and we lead our companies as if the world, I mean, what is quarterly guidance that you give to investors, if not, again, a prediction of the future? And you get hammered if you get it wrong. Look at the world. How could you get it right? Even on a quarterly basis, how could you get it right when the world is so unpredictable? But we still expect predictability. We still expect companies to tell us exactly what their earnings are going to be on a quarterly basis. It's completely insane. And so senior leaderships have been trained for no fault of their own in this engineering mindset where the whole is actually the sum of the part, which has led to this silo mindset. You know, we take a company and we break it down in silos, and then we add up the silos to create the whole. That's basically industrial manufacturing circa 1850. That's how we organized companies. So, you know, a hierarchical, command and control, silo-based manufacturing facility. So this whole thinking came to life about 150, 200 years ago. Frederick Taylor, you know, the Ford Model T production line, all this thinking is completely outdated for a complex environment. And what's a complex environment? It's an environment where you no longer understand causality. It's not linear, so small changes in inputs can create massive changes in outputs. It's not replicable. You can do 3 times the same thing and obtain 3 different results.
Yeah.
And the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Right.
But no, very few leaders, I shouldn't say no leaders, because there are leaders who understand that very well. But the majority of leaders, particularly in the well-structured corporate world, very traditional corporate world, they don't understand that. And so they keep applying the engineering mindset to a complex adaptive environment. And so it doesn't work, right? Make a long story short, it just doesn't work. We end up working more and more hours to produce the same mediocre results. We're no longer extracting productivity growth, by the way, less and less, right? Because even though we keep introducing new technologies, because this is all so you know, a complex environment. You want to transform a company culture. It's a complex adaptive problem. You want to respond to market changes, predict inflation. These are all complex adaptive changes. So I see my leaders that I work with working harder and harder for the same results, and they're like what you described. That they're getting burnt out and you know, chronic busyness as opposed to acute busyness. And that's simply because they don't have the tools to face complexity. The tools exist. And part of my job is to train that, but you need to change your mindset completely. You have to let go of your attachment to outcomes. When you do that, you know, and it comes from the Zen tradition of beginner's mind and the rest. But when you start letting go of your attachment to outcomes, then suddenly you can relax and say, well, you know, I'm going to move step by step and I'm going to adjust as it goes. But when you're a CEO of a publicly listed company and you tell your board, you know what, I'm going to let go of my attachment to outcomes, you're shut the door. You don't last. And so the system is built to perpetuate this technical mindset based on predictability and certainty and reliability when it doesn't work anymore. But again, this is another one of my battles. It's going to take a long time.
This is why your message is so profound but needed. Like, this is needed because it's almost like you can almost tell, like, there's 1% of companies that get this, and there's 99% of companies that could do with this that don't yet get this, that are going to continue doing the same thing day in, day out, and they're going to churn through employees who have talent. Then those employees are going to make the mistake thinking that it was the company, or it was they need to go change industries and not making the right decision there. And actually, if we can get companies thinking, CEOs, executives thinking in the right way from a mindset perspective, the whole thing shifts because the complexity is shift. So we're, like you say, outdated principles leading a completely new world. So Fabrice, I mean, that is the message, but what's the solution? I mean, I know we've got it here, but like what it is.
Well, I don't think there's one solution, and I'm very careful to not apply again the engineering problem solving, and tell people if you do A, B, C, you will obtain D, E, F, because that's the old mindset. So I don't know that there is a solution, but there's a number of things you can do.
Hmm.
And the solution will not come from outside, by the way. It has to come from you. So the first step that I usually recommend to the companies I work with, and actually I don't work with companies, I work with individuals, I work with leaders, I work with executive teams. I think the concept of companies is probably not useful when you think of leadership development. It's really, you're talking to individuals, right? And each with their stories and their narratives and their mindsets and their journeys. And so you have to be very flexible and recognizing that everyone is different. But I say, look, why don't we take a pause first instead of continuing to run on the treadmill? Let's take a pause. And particularly for individuals who are facing some challenges in their lives, in their business, etc., what I call the retreat, which is essentially to disconnect and go into silence and solitude for a period of time, which doesn't need to be very long. It could just be a handful of hours, but just disconnected from that constant flow of information and pressure that is created by the technology, and going to a place where you can sort of re-energize yourself, resource yourself, whether it's in nature or in a nice room in your house or a nice coffee shop that you love. But going to this place of solitude and silence, inner silence and inner solitude, because you could still be surrounded by people in a noisy environment, but creating that inner silence and inner solitude to start processing. And from here, there is no predictability, there is no certainty. So what happens is going to be unique for every individual. But what I can guarantee is that when we start taking time off, and I'm sure everyone who's listening to us has experienced that. At a point in time, we've all experienced that we go for a walk in nature, or we just chill by the pool, or whatever. Yeah, we all crave for that in a way, but we don't want to make time for it. When you deliberately make time for it, then magic starts happening, because we're actually meant, we are wired, I believe, to adapt to complex situations. I think the world that we've created after the second industrial revolution is actually a very artificial world, right? With cities that have light 24 hours a day. We've really changed our habit. I mean, cars have transformed the scenery, the landscapes of human habitat tremendously. So we live in an environment that is very artificial and that is overstimulating, and we're no longer capable of tapping into our inner resources, but they're still here. And so periods of retreats, just to put it very, very shortly, and then we can double click on what it means and how we do that. But short periods of retreat where we disconnect and we spend time in silence and solitude are the key to start seeing bigger patterns and shaping ourselves to being better at responding to the patterns we observe, right? It's in the leadership literature, you will find Ron Heifetz, for example, who talks about going on the balcony, not being on the dance floor, but going on the balcony. In every spiritual tradition, you'll find approaches and methods to do retreats, whether it's in Buddhism, the Buddhists do retreats all the time, in Hinduism, retiring to the forest or to the ashram. In Christianity, also retiring for certain periods of time to monasteries or doing a spiritual retreat. I mean, you have these traditions of retreats everywhere, and they come from centuries and centuries back. We've just forgotten. We've forgotten who we are.
True. Just be like I like the truth about putting artificial lights into cities. Like, just because we can doesn't mean we have to. And what was the consequence of that? Like, we've man-made these things because we've invented things, and yet then we've got away from our roots. I know in the book you talk about the four pillars of retreat, like silence, solitude, space, and spirit. And I can see. So, would you consider yourself a spiritual person? How did you bring that? And what does spirit mean in the essence of retreats?
I would definitely consider myself a spiritual person, simply because when you recognize the complexity of the world, you also recognize that there's no simple explanation or no simple problem solving that can take you to where you want to be. So you have, in a way, you have to let go and trust that things will emerge. And you could take a very scientific approach to it, but I prefer to say, look, whatever we do, we're not in control, and results will emerge without us being able to predict how they will emerge. So just like if you look at the patterns of the sand in the desert, dunes emerge, and you have ripples of sands on the dunes, etc. And these are all patterns. The world organizes itself in patterns in ways that we're not able to predict, but patterns emerge. And just having confidence that whatever you do, patterns will emerge, and they're usually nice patterns, is in a way a spiritual approach to the world of leadership. And you see that in corporations all over. A corporate culture. What is a corporate culture? It is something that emerged. You don't create a corporate culture. I mean, there's a lot of charlatans who pretend that they can help you shape whatever culture you want, but it's complete BS. Cultures emerge. Now you can identify particular aspects of a culture and reinforce them. You can, but are you able to predict where you will be in 2 years when you're looking at the complexity of a human system? Of course not. So I'm always very humble when I speak with clients, because a lot of what we do is helping them shape cultures that are more conducive to what they want to achieve. In particular, we like to create cultures where employees stop being fearful and instead become much more joyful and confident. We like to create cultures where people collaborate, and therefore the incentive to protect yourself and just care for yourself diminish to zero, and the incentive becomes supporting the collective and acting for the greater good. So there's elements of cultures that sometimes we want to emphasize, but you have to be very humble when you start tweaking with the corporate culture, and it's going to be a trial and error. You're going to try a few things, and you're going to see how the system responds, and then you'll try, and you're going to learn, and you're going to try a few other things, and you'll see how the system responds, which is a traditional approach to complexity. You probe, you see how the system responds to your probe, and then you adjust, and you learn, and you repeat the experiment many, many times. In marketing, we call that A/B testing, right? We do two different things, see how the market responds. That's nothing else than testing the emergence of the system. So, I can explain it with the words of leadership, or I can take a spiritual approach to it and say, look, when I work on corporate culture, for example, I completely let go of my attachment to outcomes. I go with an open mind, and I say, okay, I understand what is the direction of the journey, but I will never tell you exactly what is the destination and when we're going to get there, because nobody knows.
And
So
it's almost like you said it as well with the you're talking to individuals, even though it's a company, it's an individual, and you're working with individuals. And that means that the culture will be you've got to test it. You can't just say it's going to be this playbook and it's going to have this outcome. It like these are themes like joy and collaboration, but how that is represented. What does joy mean within this culture? And that, like, yes, it's got a feeling and it's great to have this, but it's not just standardized. It's not just packaged. It's their joy and it's their type of collaboration. It's that culture has got to be created itself. Like it comes from somewhere else.
yeah, and that's why it always I find it fascinating when people come and say, I'm going to transform, we're going to transform your company, and it's going to take 2 years, and this is where we're going to be, then we're going to transform the organization chart, and we're going to transform the processes, and we're going to transform the target operating model, and we're going to transform the culture. And these are very complex things that are actually affecting a human system, and you have absolutely no idea how the human system is going to respond. So coming to it with complete certainty and say, oh, it's going to take 2 years, and it's actually very foolish,
It's
very
another
foolish.
bullshit kind of
Yeah,
part of
yeah,
this.
yeah.
It's
What,
just,
what you can say is to say, look, we're going to define the direction of travel, because that is important. If you don't have a compass, you don't know in which direction you're going. So you need a compass. And for me, this compass has to bring elements of performance. So we're doing this because we want to increase performance, but we also are doing this because there's a deeper purpose, right? There's a meaning to what we're doing. For example, we're serving customers in ways that they have never been served before. We're creating experiences for our customers. We're creating experiences for our employees. Unfortunately, a lot in the corporate world, a lot of the motives for transforming corporations is just we're going to squeeze more to produce more profits for the shareholders, which I find utterly uninspiring. And unfortunately, that is still a majority of the motives for transformation. But you can have positive motives as well, and to say, look, we're really, we're clear about our purpose. We're clear why this corporation exists, right? It has a purpose, and it has a positive purpose, right? It's creating good in the world, because we're supporting our customers, we're supporting our communities, etc. And at the same time, we have to make money, because if we don't make money, we're going to go bankrupt, and so it doesn't help anyone. So we have to make money. But why do we need to grow 20% a year? Does it really, do the shareholders need to really have profits that increase by 20% a year? Do we need to increase shareholder value by 20% a year?
Is
I
that
don't
the
know.
best for everybody?
Unfortunately, there's no limit to the growth expectations that we have. We're never able to say this is enough. The only corporations that do that and moderate their growth expectations and profit expectations are typically privately owned by families who recognize that, adding another billion to their portfolio or their wealth is not going to change their lives, and therefore there's other things. It's not that they want their businesses to lose money, but they want their businesses to do well. But there's other things that matter. The respectability. I was with one yesterday, fairly significant company, and maximizing profit is not their objective. Right? They're a major employer in the region. So keeping employment, being a good citizen is very important. Preserving the reputation of the family is very important. So it exists, right? I'm not saying it never exists. I'm saying it's rare, but any transformation needs to be supported by performance and purpose. And then that's the direction of travel. And then we're going to go step by step, and we're going to figure it out as we progress. How long, at what speed are we going to progress? I don't know. It depends on whether the road is clear or whether there's obstacles on the road. Depends on the weather. If the sun is shining, it's great. If it's raining and thunderstorm, I'll have to take shelter for a while. So I don't know. Maybe the road is blocked and I'll have to find a detour. So I roughly know my direction of travel, but I cannot tell you where we're going to go exactly and when we're going to get there. So you let go of your expectations to outcome, which is the only way to approach complex systems.
I love this, Fabrice. I love that this can be applied on a personal level. I know we're talking about businesses here and how you take a business through this, and this one, but switching gears, the individual can do this when they're navigating their own challenges and thinking that this is something that need to take on the direction of travel. Are you traveling in the direction that you want to go, and you can adjust as you go rather than thinking that it needs to all be planned out and be at these stages. In the book, you talk about horizontal and vertical, just so we get that clear for people. What does that mean, and how does that really tie this, what we're talking about, in to then the second question would be after that is, where do you go on retreat and what is the essence of a good retreat?
Okay. Well, the horizontal is the dimension of time. So that's essentially the world in which we live. It's a world that is marked by time. And if we go back to the corporate world, everything is about milestones and we'll get there by this date, etc. I find that time is in certain parts of our world, for example, operating trains or planes, airlines, etc. Time is important. You want your trains to depart on time and to arrive on time. You want your planes to leave on time and to land on time. So I'm not saying, we can totally disregard time. In the technical engineering world, time matters. But remember, this is a world of predictability and reliability. This is essentially the infrastructure of the world operates on an engineering basis, and we like to have time. But for all the more complex elements in our lives, whether you're looking at your career, you're looking at when you will have completed a project where there's a number of dimensions that make it a complex project, etc. Time becomes really a violent constraint, very violent. And I always say to my client, look, you can have a certain outcome or you can have a certain timing, but you cannot have both. If you're trying to achieve a certain outcome by a certain time, you're going to have to be extremely violent on your company and put a lot of pressure. And you're probably going to get it wrong anyway. I mean, look, projects never finish on time, or on budget. It never works. So when you're facing complexity, you have to be very humble and you say, look, I want to get there, but I don't know when I'm going to get it. Or in 3 months, we will see where we are, but you cannot have both. Right? But unfortunately, so we live in this dimension of time, which I call the horizontal line, which is I will be happy when I get there. In 3 months, I'll be there. I want a promotion in 1 year. I want to have reached $1 billion of sales by 2026. I want to have created my unicorn by 2028. Everything is time bound. And it's a world that has created the busyness, the constant expectations, this incredible pressure that is on everyone. So we live in this dimension of time, and we never stop. Now, the vertical dimension is the dimension of presence. So at a particular moment in time, I'm going to stop time. I'm going to say, you know what? Time doesn't matter. I'm just going to be fully present here. I'm not going to project myself in the future, like in 3 months, I want this, or I will be happy when, which is what we hear all the time in the corporate world. The present is never satisfying in the corporate world. If you listen to any senior executive, they say, yeah, we will be happy when. Today is not good enough. They come from a place of insufficiency, a place of deficiency. You can never be happy with the present because the mindset is if you're happy with the present, you're complacent. No, if you're happy with the present, you're present. You're not complacent. The present is fantastic. Look at us. We're having this great conversation, a great moment, It's a present. Why don't we deepen,
embrace it,
and really be present? And not worry about what we're going to have for lunch and the 6 emails we haven't sent and what I should have done yesterday and that would have, this is all fictitious. The reality is that the past is the past and you cannot change it. And the future is purely hypothetical because you really have no idea what the future is like. So why don't we deepen the present moment? And so, the big advocates of the present moment, you would find Eckhart Tolle, for example, The Power of Now. I mean, his entire book is about the vertical dimension. Right. But any spiritual tradition that emphasizes the present moment is basically deepening the vertical dimension. And so in my book, The Art of Retreat, I make the argument that we're very good at living in the horizontal dimension, but we're very poorly equipped to explore the vertical dimension. And retreats are a gateway to immerse ourselves in this vertical dimension of presence. So instead of being absent, which is what we are. I mean, you just look at people in the street. They're all walking with their phones in front of them. They're completely absent. And you find this culture of absence all over the corporate world. We're here, but we're not here. You're in a meeting room, but you're checking emails. You're having a conversation with someone, but as soon as your phone goes beep, beep, even if you don't want, it's such a powerful magnet that you lose the presence. So we live in this culture of absence. We're on autopilot. We don't remember where we put our keys, our car keys or whatever. We're not just there. The bodies are there, but the minds are always somewhere else. And so a retreat is a way to reconnect with yourself and basically be present, be whole, your mind, your body, your heart, your soul in one place at the same moment.
Wow, sounds amazing, doesn't it? Like and then creating the habit of creating retreats, because I think a big part of what you say is the retreat doesn't have to be 2 weeks in Spain doing the pilgrimage or something that's monumental. It
No,
can
you
be
don't
in
need
a
to
hotel
shave your
room.
head and go to the Himalayas, and wear orange robes or whatever. No, a retreat, and you mentioned the 4 S's of silence, solitude, space, and soul. A retreat is simply an intention to spend time in silence. And by silence, I mean disconnect the device. So stop the external stimulation so you can turn your attention inward. In solitude, for the same reason, you have to be alone so you're not interrupted and not constantly engaged with others. So it's time with yourself. And I always recommend to do that in a nice, conducive space, whether it's nature, a nice environment. And I think everyone has places that resonate with them, where they feel open and joyful and relaxed. And there's places that make us feel tense. And, a lot of office environments are places of contraction, like open space and cubicles and it's not where you're going to do your best thinking. Every time I lead a leadership development program or a retreat, I ask people, where is it that you do your best thinking? And you know what? I've been doing this for a long time. No one has ever said in the office. No one has ever said in a meeting.
Yeah.
No, you do your best thinking when you're walking your dog, when you're in the shower, when you're, lying in bed. So why don't we create more time to spend time in a space where we can be fully.
It can be scary though, right? Like
Yeah.
I remember when I was 26 and I had quite a active. I was in London and had London's a very good city to be in when you're 26, but the way I'd built my life was I was out every night for 8 weeks straight one time. 8 weeks every night I had plans and we're not talking like being in bed at 10. We're talking like 1, 2, 3 a.m. And the idea of going and spending, and that was when I was 26. Obviously I've matured a little bit since then, but like it would scare the hell out of me to go and say, you're going to go and be somewhere. I forced myself to do it, but it was scary. I didn't want to. I didn't want to get off of the pattern that I'd created, because that's where I found security, because I didn't have to deal with, oh, actually, there's some real stuff you need to address here. And I can imagine as well, like if you fast forward to someone in their 40s, they're in the the, the status, the power position. Similarly, the office, the emails are coming in. You can fill your diary with meetings, you can fill them with board meetings, whatever you want, it's there to distract you from actually no, the retreat is now a priority, and solitude, because the piece that resonated massively was the loneliness side of things. When you're lonely and you're dealing with problems, you have mentioned that's the cure. The solitude is if you're doing loneliness wrong, you don't get. But if you're in solitude, you're actually curing the loneliness, because you're able to come in and be one with yourself more and allow you. It's a gift.
Yeah. I always distinguish solitude from loneliness. And I find loneliness is not having relationships. And we talk more and more about people being lonely because we have fake friends on Instagram and Twitter and what have you, but we don't have real relationships. And particularly as people age and the number of their friends and loved ones disappear, they find themselves more and more lonely. And this is really terrible. Solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is a deliberate choice to extract yourself from the world for a period of time, knowing that when you go back to the world, you go back to your family, to your friends, to your colleagues, you will be actually a better person because you will have spent that time in solitude. So it's different, but the solitude is a gateway to connecting with yourself. Of course, solitude, silence, and being in a good space that energizes you and inspires you, and being open to reconnecting with your soul, which is the fourth S. I find these are the four ingredients of a retreat, because you could go in solitude and silence and in a nice space, but if you're not going to pay attention deliberately to what's happening inside, you're probably not going to benefit as much. I think you will benefit from a retreat because it's going to bring down the stress levels and the cortisol and the excitement, etc. So you will still benefit, but I think a deliberate program to explore your inner life will bring the most benefits to a retreat. And again, it doesn't have to be 3 weeks in the Himalayas, right? It could be 1 hour or two with a blank sheet of paper, sitting in a coffee shop with the phone and disconnected and the laptop folded in your bag, and that could very well do it. But then, in the book, I suggest a number of themes that people can explore on these retreats, and I mentioned 7 themes that I find are recurring topics of development for human beings. The first theme is distinguishing the destination from the journey. We're all on a journey, but if we try to predict the destination, we're wasting our time, in my view. The second one, I don't remember them in order, but it's deepening relationships. So being really present for each other, which is something that we rarely do in the corporate world, but it makes such a difference when a leader is truly present. When someone makes you feel, I don't know how many times it's happened in your life, Tim, and particularly in the office, that someone made you feel that they really saw you.
Magic.
And they really heard you and they really understood you. As opposed to, hey, we have 5 minutes, why don't you tell me what's on your mind and we'll fix it.
Yeah.
And by the way, you should do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So relationships, dealing with complexity, which is the whole theme of, recognizing the engineering problems and distinguishing them from the complex problems, because likely in our executive life, we will deal with engineering problems, organizing deliveries for clients and looking at spending and procurement, etc. All things can be predicted, right? So you do A, B, C, and you're going to get D, E, F. That's a big part of the executive life. But the more senior you get, the less that is, because you can leave it to the technicians, to the experts, and you're facing the complex problem. And unfortunately, you're trying to solve these complex problems with the engineering mindset. So it doesn't help, right? So I have an entire chapter dedicated to that. And then I have chapters on death, which we don't like to talk about that much, but I find that executives who meditate on death find a new sense of
Life,
fulfillment and meaning, because you realize that, if you're stuck in a bad job, for example, time is finite. So meditating on death will always lead you to making better decisions for yourselves and for your organizations. And wisdom and purpose, which are always important themes, right? How do you acquire and develop more wisdom? Which I define essentially as the ability to embrace polarities instead of seeing the world in black and white and say it's either A or B. You're with me or you're against me. We do A, or we can invest or we cannot invest. And very often choices are presented in this Manichaean, A or B, black and white. You're Democrat or you're Republican. You're religious or you're agnostic. And these are not useful choices. And I find wisdom is actually the ability to combine polarities. And finally, the last chapter is on purpose and how to, even though I don't like too much to talk about purpose because I think it's a bit of a grandiose word, I prefer to talk about meaning or fulfillment. What gives us a sense of fulfillment every day in our life? It's not so much a purpose, my purpose is I will have achieved it in 30 years, etc. No, every day, what gives me a sense of fulfillment? I go home at night and I say, it was not a 0 day. It's a day where I did something that mattered.
Really,
So that's
Fabrice, you've done something that mattered today. I feel like I've been on a retreat right now with you, talking to you about this. It's like I could honestly talk to you all day. These topics are true to my heart, but I can see that you have a vast wealth of experience that comes through living it and then teaching it, and then putting yourself in the shoes of you can speak to the person that's right in the arena right now. And I actually love that you're at McKinsey doing it, because that's not an easy world to, you're in the world of that. That's a big amount that you're going to have on your plate. Your calendar will be full, and you would have to be able to do that and do this how you're doing it. It's not like there's not a huge demand on your time. We've been talking about scheduling this for a few weeks, and I've seen you go to various countries in the last few weeks, right? And you've also been and done a retreat as well. So it's like you practice what you preach. And so what's your, I mean, last kind of, I don't want to wrap up, but I feel like, lunches are waiting for you. And I feel very in the present moment now. But like, for the second last question then, dreams and signs. What's the significance of dreams and signs? Do you have anything around that? And secondly, like, once you overcome the fact that you're like, well, retreats are part of the answer. Like, I love that you said there's no one fix, like it's complexity, and but retreats and the bits, the component parts of a good retreat, the essence of a good retreat, which everyone should go get your book, The Art of Retreats, because it will take you through that. And it's a brilliant read, I would say, to have with you on your first retreat. Um, Once you do that and you overcome that, like, is it something you schedule and you put it in? Like, how often are you putting these retreats in? Are you making it something that you absolutely love? Because it sounds to me like every day is like filled with life and enjoyment, and this is what you're basing the day on, right? Like, we should get the most out of our days and aliveness. So how do you get to a place where your year, how many retreats, like what should we be doing?
Yes. So first thing I want to say is I don't want to present the retreat as the fix that's going to change your life and it's the solution to everything. I think uh, getting into a discipline of scheduling retreats a few times a year or regularly shorter retreats every month, etc. And again, they don't need to be you going somewhere and locking yourself up in a cabin in the woods, etc. It could be done at home or in the coffee shop downstairs.
Mm.
So but it's part of a discipline of life. I always work with our clients to help them create what I call a life of practice. I don't believe that you can function in life, particularly if you have leadership responsibilities, without a number of disciplined practices that will help you be centered, that will help you manage your energy, your recovery, and do the deep thinking that you need to do as a leader. So some of the other practices could include meditating in the morning. I don't necessarily call meditating 10 minutes or 20 minutes in the morning a retreat, but it's a practice. And it's a practice that many of the executives I work with have adopted. And that gives them a place and a time where they can be centered and truly with themselves and connected to their inner life. So meditating is a practice. Journaling is a practice. The putting pen to paper and reflecting on how you feel in certain circumstances, what you've learned today, what you're grateful for, whatever journaling you do. And in my book, I give many prompts of how you can journal, right? But a practice of journaling, a practice of prayer is very important. And then you have all the physical movement practices to keep your body going. So going to the gym, cardio, strength, movement, proper nutrition, proper sleep. These are all the practices of life that obviously everyone would benefit from, but particularly senior leaders, because we need to remain whole. The higher we go in the food chain, the more whole we need to be. We cannot be constantly fragmented. So it's a life of practice. Retreats, if you want, are the big pillars. And because they are the big pillars, because they take a little bit more time, because you're going to go a little bit deeper, they need to be scheduled. So I try to do one long retreat, maybe two. Every year I just did one. You mentioned that. I went to France and spent 4 days in silence in a Benedictine monastery, following the rhythm of the monks. So the 7 prayers every day, starting at 5:30 and finishing at 8:30. And this is obviously a place where you find a lot of inspiration, and it's dense with spirituality, and it's a beautiful place in nature. So I wrote and wrote, and I couldn't stop writing in my journal. I mean, there's so many things that were coming up to me. I love, I have a little house in the south of France. I occasionally go to Spain. So there's places that really inspire me. Spain is in the mountains. France is by the Mediterranean Sea. So these are environments that inspire me and where I find peace. So, but everyone will have their own things. It's not that what I'm doing is what someone else should be doing, but retreats typically have to be scheduled, particularly because otherwise we're going to fall prey again to the busyness that you were mentioning at the beginning of our conversation. The calendar is going to fill. So if you don't block the calendar, and by the way, you should block your calendar for short retreats or long retreats if you can, but you should also block your calendar for deep work. Mm-hmm. Because you're not going to be able to do your best thinking and your best productive work if you're constantly in half-hour back-to-back Zoom meetings. You're going to end up completely wasted if you do that the whole day and you haven't done anything. So whether you're analyzing, writing, preparing communications, whatever is the deep work that you're doing, schedule time for it. Don't leave it to chance, because if you leave it to chance, your calendar is going to fill up. So I'm very, very disciplined in blocking time in my calendar, and I work with my assistant to. She's very good at keeping it, adhering to the times I've blocked, so I can do my deep work, which essentially involves thinking, writing, and then being in the presence of clients. But everyone will have their own ways of doing that.
This is, and I love that, because it goes, and I think that's what it goes back to. This is individual yet connected, and this is a route through in a direction that you want to travel. And the misconception being that the higher you go, you wouldn't have time for these things. Yet it's the very thing that can unlock, and it can be an unlock. Fabrice, thank you for blessing us with your wisdom today. I think you're giving people freedom, and we have people doing inspirational things around the world on the show, but you're giving that courage and that inspiration to people. You're planting seeds in their heart for them to go out there and be able to have a life of freedom, yet still succeed in the arenas they want to play in, and then decide, like, that ball of stress and that part, some of the hardest problems, is what you're focused on. And I love that. I really have loved today's conversation. I loved how you stepped us through it. So thank you for pouring your soul into that today. How can people...
You're a big part of it, Tim. You create the conditions for this. So I can see that you've gone through your own journey, and the presence that you bring is amazing. So you're a big part of creating the quality conversation like that. What I would say to people who, it's easy to come up with reasons you cannot block the time.
Right.
Uh, I cannot let down my colleagues. They need to be able to reach me. I don't spend enough time with my family. So if I have 2 days, I'm going to spend it with. We have 1,000 reasons why we can't. And some of these reasons are valid. I mean, there may be periods of time where you really, really, really should not go on a retreat because there's a big project or there's a big proposal that is due next week. And no, this is not the time to tell everyone, sorry, guys, I'm going on a retreat. So let's be realistic, right? There are times in life when we need to be busy at work doing the stuff for which we're paid. There's nothing wrong with that. But there will be downtime, and in the downtime, I think it's important to be able to say, look, guys, you really don't need to reach me every day, right? If I go away for 4 days, the company is not going to crumble. Because if I die tomorrow, the company won't crumble. You will replace me. So guys, cut me some slack, and I'm going away for 4 days. So you have to stop being a victim of your calendar, and you need to start managing it proactively and stand for the things you want to do. So that's the advice I would give to everyone who says, but I can't take time for a retreat. The I can't is a victim talk. I don't want is
it's hard when
self-authoring.
When other people don't have this discipline for themselves and they put something in your diary, regardless of what was already in there. Yeah, that's the skill then, is to be disciplined and to push back and to say, hang on, sorry, you've come in on my time here doing this. So
and by the way, when I come back from the retreat, I will be a better person. I will be a better leader. I will have found more balance. I will have found more clarity. I will have found more purpose. And so you really want me to go on a retreat. So that's the argument, right? So look, if people want to reach out, I think the best way is on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. My email address is on LinkedIn and it's in the book. I also have a website at desmarescaux.com. I trust you'll put that in the notes.
It will be there.
And yeah, I love to be in touch with people who are interested like you are in this kind of work, because this is truly transformational work, and it's important work. And I'm not saying that because I'm doing it, but it's important work for the world. So we need the more people who start practicing this, the better, because we really need it. I think the work is going into a dark place if we don't awaken. But thank you so much, Tim. It's fantastic talking to you. I really loved it.
No, very welcome. Thank you for blessing us today.
You're very welcome.